Hi, everybody. Let's just talk about what we're going to do for the Song 1 assignment. And I'll try to, go through the assignment with you, and I'll do my own, and do my own subtle touches to your assignment. Of course, yours is going to be much better because I'm just doing this, right off the fly here, of course. But you put a lot more time into it. At the same token, I think that you'll get the idea, and hopefully I can inspire us to bring our productions to the next level. With what we're talking here with song number 1 with this assignment, we want to look at having it be 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be graded up and or down if it's more or less. It's just the idea that when we're looking at this A, B, A, B, C, B format, we want to make sure that we've got a verse and a chorus with a second verse and a second chorus, and then going into a bridge, just like what we've talked about here in this module, the frosting bridge ideas and mixing basics. That bridge has got to be a little bit different, of course, and then when we go back to our chorus, it's going to kind of drop us back home. And as many of you know, I'd worked at Motown for many years, and most of the music at Motown is pretty much the same. It's the same format, the same formula, and for the most part, you're looking at this same formula. The verse, chorus, bridge, back to the chorus. Now, when we keep continuing on, we want to make sure that each section must be 16 bars, total in 96 bars. So there's nothing to it, and don't overthink it. Of course, just make sure that you set it out. Obviously, now that you know how to count our measures, it's really, really easy to look at. And so, as you can see here, we've got, we're well on our way. We've got a lot here with just what we've done within the first 2 projects. And don't let me tell you that you can't change what you've done. If you want to use what you've done in the first 2 projects, great. If you'd like to do something completely different, I think that'd be awesome too. It's totally up to you. Now, I'm going to use what we've got here, of course, obviously, but in the sense of what you're doing, there's no rules, of course. Just make sure that it has something to do with what we're talking about here, and obviously, most importantly, it's following this format. But whatever you pick for your music, that's totally up to you. Now, in the beginning, just like what we had done before, we want to make sure that we're introducing a new idea every 4 bars. And so I've done that, of course, right? Like what we had talked about in the last few assignments, of course, in the last module. In that beginning, we're kind of introducing everything as it stair steps. We start with our bass line. We get that house call layer, and we start putting that in. Of course, we start stepping it back to hopefully create a dynamic to get into our chorus. Now, when we get into our chorus, of course, we want to make sure that that chorus is very strong, and that chorus is always playing those same parts all the way throughout. And so obviously in this case, we're creating a nice effective transition. And so just going back to your notes real quick, so there's no worries and nothing to question. It's really, really quite simple. Clear and distinct, and then a very effective transition between your verse and your chorus. Really, really easy. And so what I'd done for that, of course, is I just did a few little edits on my rhythm, a few little edits on my bass, of course. I took out the lead and, like what you saw in the last few modules, I used my fade tool to get those out. And then when it came into my rhythm, chorus, my bass chorus, my accompaniment chorus, and my lead chorus, I've got them all playing out, and it really works well. It puts us to that next plateau, hopefully a little bit. Of course, I'm sure yours are much better, of course, right? Now, in the sense of making sure that on our chorus has a strong groove with a clear kick, snare, hi-hat sound. And we made sure that we did this on this particular track. And so, as I play this through, let's just kind of get ourselves started so we kind of remember where we're at. Just, think of all those details that we've gone up to this point. The other aspect, the bass line has some movement in the chorus. And then when the bridge comes in, we want to make sure that something interesting happens differently in the bridge section. And so let's just kind of get ourselves rolling here into this section here on the verse. And let's talk about what we can do to create our second verse using our rubber band tool. So as I play this through, let's just kind of see where we're at here. And now we're ready for that verse. So what can we do? Now, it's very, very simple, and I'm sure many of you probably do this, but for those that have never done this before, when we start piecing these sections together, it's really quite easy. We've already done all of the work as far as putting that together. And so really just simply come over and as I've separated out the tracks, I'm just going to simply just drag in, and I'm going to try to lasso or use the rubber band effect to just highlight what I want there. So as you can see here, I'm just dragging on the outside of the tracks, starting on one, and then I'm just dragging all the way over everything. Now in this case then, what you're going to have to do, if you wanted to, of course, you could just option drag that over if you wanted, but what I'm doing is hitting Command C, which is going to copy it, and then I'm going to roll over to the next spot that I want it to go to. I'll go to my toggle, click where I want it in this spot, and then I'm going to hit Command V, and you'll see all of those parts will show up. Now again, if you wanted, you could easily just simply hold down Option and then drag those parts over as well, and that will do the same thing. So obviously, whatever you decide that you want to do. The other thing that I did here, as you can see, is I set up my verse 2 marker. Now that's totally up to you if you want to create that. I'm not going to grade you on this particular case on that, but I just want to make sure that you note that if you wanted to organize it that way, it's very, very simple to create your marker and navigate there. Now, as we play this back, we've got our transition, and hopefully that transition will roll in, but some of the things that we've done to hopefully help that transition back to our verse 2. We've utilized some of that frosting that we talked about, remember, and before, as I was leading into this, I had not muted this yet, so as you kind of heard our first verse going into the chorus, it sounded really nice, having this frosting there, of course. So we can pick what we want to pick, and so in this case, maybe not having that long crash in this case in the verse, but maybe using that Egyptian sky beat, and then only using the noise sweep will lead us back nicely into that verse. Let's just see what happens here. And we get some really nice overlapping sounds there too that lead us, into our verse nicely. Now, because the bass line starts that way, maybe what we could do is option drag our house call back over here and do something a little bit different than what we had done in the beginning. So now I'm just kind of touching it up just a touch and maybe putting a little bit more of this Luminous Dream in. Let's just see what happens here. I'll just put it there. There we go. Perfect. Let's check it out. Now I'm feeling like I want a little bit of a build on the drums there too, but I don't want all of them to come in right away. So I'm going to just use that magic of what we had done here to create our edit, and I'm just going to copy and paste that. Or you, of course, could option drag that section. As you can see here, I'm using my rubber band effect to highlight all of them, right? And then we'll just hit Command C to copy them all. Go back, I want that to come in here at 37. Click where I want it and paste it with Command V. Or I could just simply highlight everything, and I could hit Option, and I could drag that over on that side. It's the same. Let's see what we've got. And I'm going to just use, in this case, I'm going to hit Option drag and put that edit on that same side. And you'll see that it's got a really nice element. Check it out. Now, of course, we're going to put our chorus there at 49, so let's just get our toggle there and get that set. And let's go back to our chorus. This will be pretty easy here, right? Simply come on over, use our rubber band, drag over to our chorus, highlight everything. I'm going to hit Command C. Or if you'd like to, Option drag. Now I'm at 49. I'm going to click where I want that set. Command V. And now I've got my nice little block there. And noticing where I want to copy and paste everything, obviously I've got everything highlighted here as far as my tracks are concerned too, right? So if I was to say, if I had something highlighted on bass and if I was to copy and paste that, then that track would start, or at least it would be set up here on the timeline where bass is. So be very careful. Sometimes people, as they're copying and pasting, they're not realizing where we're at in the horizontal field here. So just remembering that now we've got ourselves set, and then of course if we wanted to at 49, the same thing, we could just come up here and we could create a marker. That's totally up to you. And then I've got that marker and we can just call that chorus 2. And it's just nice to know where it's coming, but obviously, for the most part, as you're working with your own tracks, you'll be able to obviously note that. But it's, a good line of sight, and if anybody asks you, at least you've got it there. So as we have this going, the other aspect, of course, is we want to go back to our frosting. I don't know about you, but I kind of miss it. So if I go to this guy here, as you can see, then I can just kind of come over and highlight them all, same idea. And then we can, put it into these little phrases. It really adds a lot, doesn't it, when it comes in and it just kind of leads us into this spot. It gives us that motion. So Command V, the same thing. And I want to copy my automation, the stuff that we had put in there, that we had talked about in the other lectures. We put that automation in, obviously, and we get some really nice movement, right? Now let's see what we've got. Now in this case, because it's the chorus, I'm going to add that crash. Of course, we want the pop Egyptian in there. I'm going to do the bass drop on that side. I'm going to take that bass drop and I'm going to put it right on the one of the chorus, right? And let's go to our arcade noise, and I'm not going to use the Twilight noise suite. Let's see what we get. Now we're at our bridge at 65. Of course, we can definitely think about putting our frosting there. While I've already got it copied and pasted, I might just put that in now so I'm ready to go, right? So let's just do that real quick. Command V, I've got that set. I'm going to copy that automation, and let's just make sure everything lines up right at 65. And now it should lead right in, and I'm going to use everything that we had put together for that song. Now, let's figure out what we're going to do for our bridge. So on the bridge, it's totally up to you. There are no rules. Now, in this case, because I'm not going to be using these 4 tracks here up on the top, I might be able to just drag and drop there, or I could create 4 more on the bottom here. You can just drag into this little area on the bottom and it'll create more tracks. And so because you've got unlimited tracks, I highly suggest, putting those 4 together, on that side down on the bottom so that we can create 4 more for our bridge, and then it's nicely organized. Now at 65 where our bridge starts, let's just think about what we're going to do. And so hopefully some of the exercises and some of your studies have led you to the idea when it comes to a bridge, it doesn't necessarily have to build. Sometimes it can, break down. Sometimes it can be rhythmic only. And some of the things that we've studied, a lot of times when the bridge hits, a lot of things break down and it's only rhythm. So in the case of this particular idea, maybe what we could do is just sort of, break it down just a little bit. Everything seems somewhat rhythmic, of course, with exception to the intro. So let's just think about what we could do when it hits to the bridge, and let's just do something where it's, kind of a little subtle breakdown. Let's see what happens, of course. Now you'll see that I've got, some very, very simple, notes here. Of course, we were talking about trying to do something a little bit, to change things up, to try to bring us, into a different world on the bridge, of course. And then at, say, maybe 69 or so, we may want to bring ourselves back to what we'd been doing before. Just hopefully that we can, ease ourselves back into the chorus. But with that, let's just kind of look at what we can do for the bridge, before we get started here. And so one of the things that I kind of thought might work is maybe I could start thinking about some little, like some bell sounds, things that are very, very different, that are just completely, out of the norm, comparative to what we've got going on in the track in itself. So I thought this might work pretty well. Right, and then maybe just a subtle little, beat, not necessarily something that's going to hold everything down, but like that's definitely going to hold it down. But I'm looking at, coming up with a nice little beat that's just sort of there, like that. So let's try to use these two together. Let's just go and let's start with these bells. And let's get those bells going. Now in this case, I'm going to use that beat, and let's just make sure that that beat's rolling too there. Okay, I like that. Now, let's use those two elements and let's see what we can get, at least as we get started here. So as we look at this, then in these four parts, then essentially, of course, there are no rules, obviously, but what I'm looking at in the case of this guy, I've got my rhythmic element. And then maybe potentially we could look at this as, accompaniment. Now, let's see what we've got as this rolls in. And let's just kind of get these sections a little bit longer. Remember, as we've done that, of course, we have to make sure that we've got those set. So that's Control L to make sure that I've got that entire loop. Or if I wanted to, I could just simply Option drag, right? Too easy. Now, if I wanted to extend this part, just use my lasso, Option drag. Now I've got those two together. And now in this particular case, it looks like we've got ourselves set up to, a good section of 8 bars, of course. Now, in this case, it might be wise to just kind of get it set so we can get these 16 and then just break it down. So I'm just going to do that very quickly. Now, let's go back to our loop and let's see if we can't find something that works with our bridge. Maybe a bass line, potentially a nice little lead line. Let's see what we've got. That for me is going to be the winner. I really like that Underground State synth bass there. So I'm going to put that in, and we're just going to block this out. Of course, we're not going to use it entirely. So let's just keep going here. Option drag over, so we've got it. Keep doing the same thing. Option drag over, and one more. And for the sake of time here, maybe I'll just try to find one more sound that might work, but let's just see what we've got. I think it's going to be this little chord stub. I really like what that's doing there. So I'll put that in and we'll try to make this all work together. Of course, I anticipate yours are going to be much, much better, of course. I'm picking the first thing pretty much that I'm seeing here just to kind of show you exactly how we can make this work now. As we've got it set, what are some of the things that we can take out? Now, as this rolls in, we definitely don't want to block this in, right? So let's think about what we can do. Now, I think what we could do then is just kind of looking at this idea of as that rolls in, let's just lose everything that has anything to do with frequency. And I'm only going to use the rhythmic. So in this case now, I've got the rhythmic pattern. And I'm going to just keep stair-stepping that, just like what we had done before. Now, in the sense of, we can keep that bell, but I'm going to lose that bass, and I'm going to lose that stab. Now, as this rolls in, now I'm going to basically have that stab come in, and we'll stair that out. As you can see here, now we just keep introducing something, trying to keep it nice and interesting. But at the same token, now we have to remember that we've got to somehow land this too, right? So when we go back into the chorus, what are we going to do? Well, maybe what I could do is just take out some of these stabs, take out a part of that bass line, so it's not the whole thing, right? Maybe potentially take out some of that topper, and only have the synth bell for a nice little fill. Another thing that we're going to note that we're probably going to want is all of that fun happening over here. We need to make sure that we've got all of our frosting, obviously, right? We've done all of that work to use it. So let's copy and paste that in, and let's make sure that that's going to lead us into that next section. So we've got some of those very nice dynamics. And let's just kind of subtly put it here very quickly, and we'll figure out what we'll do from there. Okay, and now 81 is going to be where we start our last chorus in this case, right? So if we wanted to, we could definitely just pop it there so we're ready to go. What I'm going to just do in this particular case is just create a marker and just call that our last chorus. So as you can see, it's pretty much set. Let's just kind of audition and see exactly what we've got, and then we'll go back to our notes and see what we might be missing. And so just to get us going here at 65 now we call our bridge. So I'll navigate in, create a marker, and then we're going to call this our bridge, right? There we have it. Let's see what happens as I roll from our chorus into the bridge. And then, of course, we can just place our chorus right there and we're ready to go, right? Now, of course, we've got a few things that we're going to want to fix and change, but for the most part, you get the idea. So I'm just going to place this back down on 81, and let's go back and let's rubber band our chorus. And so let me just get back to it again. Go back to the chorus, make sure we've got everything set. Copy and paste. Now, let's go back to here. Command C and then Command V. And now we've got ourselves set. Let's make sure that that transition works in. Easy enough, right? So let's go back to our notes again here. We're looking at then something interesting happening in the bridge section. I feel like there's nothing more interesting happening in the bridge section than just completely picking different sounds and then using some synth bells and things like that, right? So we did something different. We did something interesting. We transitioned in and out of the bridge. We did the best that we could to make sure that people knew that we were actually coming into a section and going out of a section. So we've had some very subtle edits, of course, as you can see here, right? And then going back to our edit here, you could see I was kind of subtly setting this and stair-stepping this out. So I was taking some away in this case, and as you can see here, then it's not all just playing through as a big brick. It kind of breaks apart just a little bit. And most importantly, we've got our frosting to lead us in that it's, has hopefully kind of given us that psyche that something's going to change when we start hearing those elements. The rhythmic parts and the lead parts in this case, and again, we're going to get to the mixing of this, but we want to make sure that those are the loudest parts. And so as we've been working with the other modules, we've been doing that little by little, and I think that's a big part of working as a producer is as we start looking at a lot of this. Now we've got to be very suspect about our bridge, of course, but we're working on this little by little, and as you can see here now, I'm just thinking about my percussion and the elements leading into the chorus and then coming out of the verses. I want to make sure all of that percussion matches, of course, right? And we note that we can easily do that just simply by soloing it out and hearing only the percussion and then basically going in from each section and just making sure that it's not weird. And I'll just kind of show you some of the things that we can do here in this case. So in the rhythmic aspect of some of our percussion here, you'll see that I'll be able to judge everything really. So as I came in, this is obviously in our verse. And you could hear how that works together. It doesn't sound different or changed. And there are times where you may potentially hear one part versus the other, and it might be a little bit disjointed, especially when you're using different rhythmic parts. So now we have to make sure, as we note that those two work together, we have to make sure that they do work with the bridge, right? So we've got that set. And now let's just do exactly the same thing with the chorus to the bridge. And to my ear, it was a little bit loud. And I'm glad that we did that because that ended up really fixing it and fine-tuning that back. So feel free to roll through, solo everything out. Make sure to check each one of your sections as we've rolled through. Just make sure that they're all working together, right? Looking at the bass, make sure that the bass is a little bit quieter than your kick. Of course, we want to make sure that the kick drum is very nice and punchy and prominent. And make sure that the accompaniment is quieter than the other parts. So the overall level, as you can see, is going to be good because, just going back to the other module, as I'm hitting Command 2 to get to my mixer, we're really going to learn from what we've talked about. Remember, we can highlight every track that we had, right? And if everything is too loud, as I've highlighted every track, we can just simply bring them down just a little bit. And this is a wonderful trick because you don't want to bring down each individual one by a little bit. Keep the integrity of your mix, highlight each individual one, and then just simply bring it down. You'll find that's definitely going to be the way that you're going to want to mix. And so as you can see that this is really quite simple, but at the same time, for me, it's something I use on a daily basis. It's one of the most important things that we can talk about in terms of amplitude is just simply making sure that you keep everything at a fairly low level, and then noting that you don't have to necessarily go back and lose the integrity of your mix. You can highlight every track, or in some cases, if you're using Pro Tools, you'll just basically group all and you'll bring them down all together, and it's really quite simple. But make sure, as we talk about that you don't change the stereo out. That's the key. The stereo out is always going to be set to unity gain, as you can see here. So as I oftentimes will see, as people are working with the mixer, if they hadn't worked before, if something's too loud or too quiet, you're going to be using this to turn things up and or down. Keep this, leave this alone. Have that set to 0, of course, right? And we learned that from, obviously, what we were just talked about in the notes in this particular module, right? So just keep everything at unity gain. You're going to be good to go. If you feel like everything is too loud, highlight your tracks and then bring them down. Okay? So now that we've got everything set, our overall level is good to go. Remember that we're going back now, and we want to think about, as far as what's happening with our bridge, maybe potentially we can start introducing certain elements that were in the other aspects of the sections. And so we could look at, some of the little parts that we had in our bridge. Potentially we could bring that into, or excuse me, some of the parts that we had in our verse, and we can bring that into our bridge. So some of the things that I really liked in what we had done was I liked what we did here with that kick pattern. So I'm going to actually use that in our bridge a little bit, not necessarily for everything, but for some parts. Let's just see where we could use that. Maybe at, I would say about 73 or so might be a nice spot. So I'll just take that rhythmic pattern and then I'll paste that in, and I'll just do one more there. like it so much, I want to keep it going, don't you? So let's just take that and let's just option drag that over. And now, let's make sure that we stair step that in, just like what we've done before. We got to create some dynamics, so we don't necessarily need that kick the whole time. But we've got ourselves a nice little groove happening, and we're using elements from our verse. And so another thing that might be kind of nice is to use something from that chorus to just kind of tell everybody that we're coming into it a little bit, right? So let's just think about what we could do, and maybe what I could do is use this little Discord layer. I'm just going to bring that in. The same thing. Let's just do that where it started at 73. And I'm going to do maybe, let's just drag this in a couple different times just to see where it works best. Now we may not use all of it, but in this case, now watch. As I use my rubber band, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to see if I can't get a nice little edit on just a nice section of it, just the beginning of it. So one more time, as we had our loop set, I can easily do that edit by grabbing one section. But what's kind of nice is if I wanted to do that to everything, I could just use my rubber band effect and it affects them all because they're all soloed together. So now I've got this set. And there we have it. So very quickly then, let's just go back and let's audition what we've got. We've got, of course, our verse, our chorus, verse 2, chorus 2, going back to our bridge, and then back into our chorus. Most importantly, utilizing elements from each section to just kind of keep things together a little bit, but very, very subtly, right? Now, the other aspect, of course, is we've got all of our frosting working together. Sometimes we're using all of it. Sometimes we're using just, small sections of it. In this case, at the beginning, let's just use a small touch of our frosting. And so let's say, for example, if you wanted to use one of these clips and some of them you didn't want to use, all I'm hitting is Control. I click on a clip. If I hit Control, I could then mute a clip. And that's going to affect only that clip, but it'll still play through on the others. And so that's a nice way to potentially be able to get through with, as you've learned what automation is. I could easily hit mute on the automation here too, but remember that's going to affect every single clip. So it's nice to maybe do that. Just simply hit Control and then I can mute that clip. Another thing that I'm going to stair step, I'm going to hit Control and mute that drop. And I'm only going to use that once, and I'm going to set that twilight, and I'm only going to have that. So in this case now, the only thing that's playing back is my Pop Egyptian crash on the first one, coming into the chorus. And then it'll be nice and subtle as it leads in. Other than that, our frosting will be very, very different. Sometimes we're using all of it, sometimes not. Verse 2, I'm going to do the same thing, only as I took the twilight noise sweep away, I'm going to do exactly the opposite, right? So now I'm going to use them, and I'm going to lose Pop Egyptian and do the opposite. See there? Now let's go back to our frosting on this side. This is chorus 2 going in. I'm going to actually use all of it just so that it really, really opens up. Coming back into the bridge, because it's tailoring down, I'm going to use that noise sweep down because that's a pitch back at a lower frequency. I'm going to take this Arcade Dream, I'm going to mute that. I'm going to mute this drop, and I'm going to mute the crash, but I'm still going to use the Pop Egyptian. So I still am using the frosting in a very, very different way. Now the last time, of course, we'll just simply use it all. Let's see what we've got. All the elements that we've just talked about in terms of our notes, right? Less than 3 minutes and 30 seconds, A, B, C, B format. Each section 16 bars for a total of 96 bars. Introducing a new idea in the beginning, of course, clear, distinct between the verse and the chorus, effective transition between the verse and chorus, all parts playing in the chorus. Chorus is a strong groove with a clear click or clear kick, snare, and hi-hat sound. Bass line has movement in the chorus, of course. Something interesting or different happens in the bridge. The bridge is contrasting, and the transition in and out of the bridge is effective. Rhythm and lead parts are the loudest, and the bass is hopefully quieter than the kick, or at least the kick is very, very punchy. The accompaniment is quieter than the other parts, and overall level is good. And before I play it back, the last thing we want to talk about is, of course, we are set to our unity gain, but remember, we had our limiters set, right? And as I had that limiter set, just like what we talked about in the notes, make sure that the output level is set to 0.1. Don't set that too far back, remember, because then that's just giving us a smaller glass as we put water and fill that up. We want to make sure it gets to that point, and then we'll just cap it off at that point, right? So let's leave it there, and we should be good to go. And then turn up your gain to the point where we can get just about minus 4 dB reduction. You should be good to go. And as I play this back, you'll see hopefully all those elements come together. Most importantly, remember that yours is going to be much better than mine because, of course, these are the first things I'm just picking as I'm talking through this. But the elements are there for you, and remember, of course, most importantly, if you have any questions, let me know. But I'll play this back, and hopefully it makes a lot of sense. And there we have it. Nothing to it, right? So let's just say now we've got to turn this in. We, of course, obviously this is going to be your grade. We've got to be able to play it. I've got to be able to hear it. So let's just come back and let's just make sure that we can bounce this out. And so as of right now, just remember that A nice way to do this then is just to highlight everything, and then in this case I'm just using my loop function up on the top to highlight everything, to just kind of tell the computer where I'm starting. And so I'm just going to get it just a little bit further back from 96. So I've got a nice little tail, start it right at 1. Go back there, you can see there I've got it set. Right? Now let's just bounce it. And so as you could come to the master fader, where you've got the little bounce here on the bottom, you can click on that, or go to File and just simply hit Bounce. And let's bounce our project or section. So what you'll probably turn in, 9 times out of 10 as a professional, you're probably going to do your HD bounce. And we've talked about this before too. So just remember that your pulse code modulation, PCM, is basically, this is the setting that you're going to want to, as you're working for television and film, as you're turning something into any label, as you're working for bands, as you're doing mixes. This is going to be probably what you turn in. So it'll allow you to be able to choose between WAV, AIFF, which are uncompressed files, which is what you want. And you can do some really nice resolution, 24-bit. You can even open that up further. So the higher the resolution, of course, that's going to be your HD signal. And you can change your sample rate. But all really I need in this case is an MP3 file. So just remember that an MP3 file is going to be a representation of this HD file. So what I would need then is just simply uncheck your PCM and check MP3 file. And so as that MP3 file is checked, as you can see, my start time and my end time are set, because that's what I put into my loop area, right? So as I've got that cycled into the loop section up here on the top, it'll tell me exactly where I'm at. Now in this case, I've got everything set. We don't need normalization, just go ahead and shut that off. And then I want that bit rate opened all the way up to 320. That's going to be your fidelity or your quality. So I think oftentimes it's set to somewhere like 128 or something. So just open that up to 320. Open your bitrate stereo up to 320. And then in this case, go ahead and copy my settings. Use best encoding. Don't filter those frequencies. Remember, we want to hear everything that's there. If we filter it, they're going to take that away. Now that's going to help you in terms of processing power, in terms of saving storage space, things like that. But don't take that. In terms of our art, we definitely don't want that checked. So you don't want that. And with that, as everything is set there, make sure that it's set to joint stereo, and you should be good to go. Just go ahead and copy these settings on your MP3. Hit OK, and save it where you will. In my case, typically what I'll do is I'll save it onto the desktop. And so in this case, what we'll just do is just go ahead and call this Song 1 assignment. And then please put your name, if you will. You could put your last name or your full name, but just definitely make sure that you've got your name on it, because I'm not going to necessarily know who it is. Oftentimes somebody will put like, Song 1 Awesome or something like that, and that's totally fine, but it doesn't necessarily tell me who it is. And so remember, as I'm downloading these, I'm downloading all of yours together, and so as I'm listening to them, if your name is on it, I'll be able to go right to the gradebook. So make sure that it does have your name on it as you save it. Song 1 assignment, I've got my name there, and then I'm just going to save it to the desktop so that I don't have to look for it, of course, right? So that once it's to the desktop, now I've got it, so let's just go ahead and bounce it down. And then from the desktop, just simply go ahead and send it to me from Canvas. So now we've got it all set. It'll convert very quickly to your MP3. And we should have it there. Let me just roll through them. So just make sure that this is exactly where you're going to go, upload your file. So once you've got your MP3, of course, this is where you'll be sending it to me. And that should be pretty much it. Let's see if I can't find it here very quickly before we go. Now just simply go ahead and just upload that to me, and we'll be good to go. So our Song 1 assignment is set here. We've got our MP3 file. You can see it's clearly labeled. And now I can just simply go ahead and play it through, and we're good to, as we said. My disclaimer to you, make sure that you play it back before you send it to us, of course. Every once in a while, you might, cut off the ending or something like that. So make sure it's exactly what you want, and we'll be good to go. Thanks again. Let me know if you have any questions. Take care, everybody. Have fun with Song 1 assignment.